Alright guys, back with part 2. I don't know why I feel I should put this picture for part 2. What are we running towards? Where are we going? What sort of eyes will this world give us? What sort of truths will it remind us of, There is a poet from 700 years ago. He says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a place. I will meet you there. And when the soul sits on that grassland, the world is too full to talk about. A suggestion of the evolution of consciousness to a point of completion, to a point where it will not feel incomplete, to a point where it will... Beyond dreams of the world, we must confront what we truly are, and so adopt as a creature on a rock in the middle of nowhere. What is glory? What is victory? What are we trying to champion? We need certain pilots of consciousness like the lion, or in some sense like the advanced communicators like the lions to roar in humanity, and the pilots of consciousness like eagles, like human beings that any moment from whatever branch of reality they're in, they can fly into the sky. For all those wondering about where the scholars looked at or where the scholars table was in the clouds, it was where man comes to a certain point where you're like, okay, this is the world I've got. What else can I do? I'm just this creature, this energy, this container of energy, this potential of expression. In the void, my heart is beating. And for what cause? For what hidden treasure is in some sense the soul come for? Right? And I remember when I was young, I came across this idea, and it was this idea in Tibetan Buddhism, and it was called inner treasure revealing. And it was the most beautiful idea, that there are treasures outside of you. Go seek these. But there are treasures within, and these treasures, they lead to riches beyond form. Like a rich somebody like Mr.Within, what is more valuable than $1 million? I will tell you, humanity has had many great warriors, and the purpose of the warrior was like you held something honorable and you fought for it. And so we must fight for the potential of the future. We are living for them. Do you understand? That means there was a time my mind created this argument for itself where I'm like, why am I being nice to people in the present? Do you know? It's as if like, why does the present matter? Do you know? And then I realized, because this is the essence. And so that is in a talk I gave recently, our greatest strategy as human beings to death is to be prepared all the time. And it's kind of like having this next level stance. There was this anime show called Demon Slayer, and for example, Wing Chun. I trained in Wing Chun for some time, and Wing Chun, it's inspired out of a crane woman, enlightened woman walking in the forest. She saw this crane and this crane and snake fight, and Wing Chun was born. And so many of man's abilities are depictions of nature. Nature has taught us so much about how to be human. Do you know that the human victory belongs to all of them? Do you know, it's kind of like all the species got us here, right? And then we're like, okay, we're hungry, we're gonna eat you. And they're like, what the fuck? I am telling you, this as soon as funds, come to me, I'm going to just start this thing where we find a replacement for food. Do you know? Because animals are too cute. Do you know what I'm saying? If you show a baby animal to anybody, like, they can't eat that animal. You know what I'm saying? It's only when you go to the grocery store and you're like, oh, look, a lifeless product I can concede. I guess it's like, it's not an animal anymore. And yet, there's something bizarre, there's something bizarre about how we're living. We're acting like we're not as savage as we're actually being as creatures, which is hilarious because we all know the savageness of man. The savageness of man, do you know what it is? It's literally like if I told you benevolence was the cheat code beyond this dimension, the opposite of that is greed. You don't understand. Guys know because they understood that those people who are greedy are not being their real self. So they're missing out on their real karma in their lifetime. This is the value of honesty. This is what in some sense must have been taught from the beginning. That if you are to truly serve mankind, you must have the kindness of poetically the future fathers of mankind. What this means is that what is going on, it's like the ancient Greeks were onto it. And they said to tame the change instantly internally, then enlightenment from the simulation of reality is instant behind your eyes. And all enlightenment tradition, wasn't paying attention a few lifetimes, just like students, imagine just like students who don't pay attention in class. If I was in it, I'd probably be like, yo, let me teach school. In the universities talking. Once, I don't know why, I think this was my ego, but once I got this unique inner vision that this is like long ass thing that in every park, in this park, and in some sense engraved on stone, not real like bodies. Imagine they asked this guy, this spiritual guy, imagine the spiritual CEO, they're like, yo man, it's like, yo, are you busy? Like, imagine the person's trying to book an appointment and the person's like, I'm busy, man, I'm busy. He's in my mind. There's a feeling about giving something that when you're a temporary being. Like, we gotta think about it, sure, simulation, truth, whatever. But human beings should not be afraid of a lifespan that is 300, 400 years. In my science fiction novel, I've written thousands of years human beings live. Like, they live to a degree where we're drawn towards slowly. It's as if whatever we do, whether we act like a king or a peasant, weak or strong, inefficient or efficient, it just takes us to where we are needed. It's like, this is the cool thing, right? It's like when you're on a roller coaster, you're not like, yo, slow down the roller coaster. I'm scared of where it's going. No. You open your eyes, you try to even see ahead, and you, in some sense, for life, you actually, it's now time for more and more a collective responsibility. The idea of the advanced civilization, the idea of the advanced humanity, it's a blessing to mankind. People don't understand. It's like, it's that time, and we felt a collective beinghood, right? That's so important. Do you know that for a second, all those people who have been just restricting truth to a narrow ideological spectrum, for a second be like that bird that flies into the sky and beyond in the void. This is the magnificence of mankind. It's like, who knew? Given enough amount of time, apes could do anything. When we used to be like, super young, and we used to be bacteria reacting to sunlight hitting the surface of the earth. Your eyes were being, in some sense, evolved underneath the water. The water was acting as some sort of like next level sunglasses for fish, I don't know what else I could say. What are the ways of getting out of a simulation? One way is you were never in the simulation, you remember. One way is you are the creator of the simulation, you can instantly uncreate it. Another way is you are the simulation. Earth was made with talk called Earth being live streamed from heaven. And people are like, yo, how do you teach honesty? By allowing people to realize that they can trust their own power. Because if you don't trust your own power, you're seeking permissions outside of yourself. You know, like I was like, no way, they're freaking gurus in India putting their thumbs on people's forehead and just like a freaking movie, like twisting their thumb and like unlocking the guy's third eye. I'm like, yo, that shit. I'm like, yo, that guy better sanitize his hands, you know, or this is like a human rights violation. It's like, yo, did this guy just unlock my third eye with a dirty thumb during coronavirus? I don't have a joke. My philosophical system. So to me, these are the views that I pretty much filter reality through. This is Mr.Within system, you know, it might be helpful. Emptiness. Conceivable world. Okay. Another view, there has from the beginning been truth, and everything from truth started, and from truth to truth it returns. So this is the Singularian view. The previous view was the voidist. The Singularian view believes reality is completely one. Everything is one. That means you look at your friends, your family, and everything is the same. What is looking from behind, what is view that till the end of time, it's a dance of chaos and order. So if somebody says, yo, is there truth and simulation? I will be like, it's like truth and simulation are dancing. You know, it's like there till the end of time, as long as there's truth, there will be there are ways that this world speaks that the mind can't even hear. The mind doesn't have the capacity to articulate because it's not dualistic, it's an instantaneous knowing. Somebody in the chat section says, aren't we technically like fungal masses? I've heard this from Joe Rogan. Its behavioral pattern, it's very difficult to say the individual actually was born in a collective intelligence. It's like Earth. Say all the celestial names, and then after man says all the celestial names, all the angels must bow. And then one of the angels doesn't, is that God doubted himself. And so when this angel rebels, right, it's as if the angel, rather than changing, and then in some sense that's the notion of the fall. And so the idea is God, the reason I feel Adam and Eve fell, because God was like, hey, who's the owner here? Who's the authority here? And it was the authority here, and it was as if mankind demonstrated, like, imagine an inventor builds an android. I mean, of course, this is just a metaphor I'm using. Theology can't be compared to reality. These are books for those who acknowledge the unseen. You know, that means religion becomes valuable to you when you realize you are more than a body. When you realize the incredible void. Now, I didn't finish anyways. There's a dualistic view, and then there's an infinite view, the infinitist. So what is this view? This is the view that truth is infinite, which is another way of saying that truth is not a noun. Fourth. Why are we here? Why are 8 billion creatures on a rock? And why does it matter if they think they're in a simulation or not? You know, the archetype of a podcaster, right? So mankind should not fear simulation, but should realize the common denominator between all simulations is the unknown witnessing force from within. You all wouldn't recommend, because here's the idea. If you're selfless, then the power arises through its necessity in the moment. Don't even have the idea of power, but their power arises because they're just staying true to the decency resonance. And I guess I'll end this off with this. When you distrust, it stops being others are, they will start being valued. That we are a creature between the known and the unknown, and we must in some sense have honor. And the talk, it's like the viewers are being I don't know, I've had moments where I don't know, you just meet. You know, at some point, the idea of, once I had an experience which was close to an inner near-death experience. And you know what it felt like? It felt like I was just, a wind hit me, and everything I was, every attribute and idea I had done enough. So what it is that feeling like we may meet it one day. What we are now. Right? Because I thought about it this way. Yo, after me, there's going to be so many children born in the future, and they're inner realms, right? Version, but the world we're physically existing in is a public version with everybody. Right now, we can't. Future, if we have an ability to see each other's thoughts, people are just going to wear blindfolds. Do you know? Why? Because it's like bi-connected. It could be that when our inner realms connect, that could dehumanize us. You know? And what is a simulation? A simulation was an unconscious choice. Who do I blame? Do I blame myself? Do I blame others? Do I blame the world? Do I blame God? Do I blame the void? Do I blame the infinite? It's like, what do I do when it all stops? And I return to the silence, which all my lectures, after I have finished them, they have entered. You know, it's kind of, it's funny, you know, it's like that the next day, right? And so there's this very unique feeling, you know, this feeling that where are all these, past senses of mine, where have they gone? Do you know, it's like, where did who I was go, you know? You know, recently I've been trying to cultivate gratefulness. Attend existence. Just to attend this great event, this grand happening, this convergence of inner realms with the future of one outer realm. Actually, fictionally living non-fictionally. So what that means is our opinions, our mind. If it's a simulation, that means it's a unique consideration of reality. What we are is like, it's like the question of what is energy doing here? For some point of view, attention. And why is this attention being energetic? because it wants to test itself. You see, walking to the grave, as scholars have said and poets have said. So it's as if in the future they might not have that mentality, and they might feel like eternal being. Do you understand? Like this, like, I don't know what a spiritual life means to others, but it's not like the world is spiritual and you're not. Do you know? It means that you're realizing that there has been an unknown witness to your known self this whole time. And that's where I get my power from. Because if the energy is not there, then nothing can happen. Various versions of it does. In the outer realms shall the greatest project of mankind begin. A creature that no longer feared the simulation, but that's another way to get out of a simulation, by communicating with the world soul. Which is through your presence. It's not like it's like, yo, what's up, world soul? And the world soul, yo, I'm good, bro, how you do? You know, it's not like that, you know. It's about your presence, because the language of higher dimensions is instantaneous knowing. It's not, there is no communication in the way we're having it here. In higher dimensions, it's like cubes already know how squares can be, but squares never know what cubes are like, you know, from our perspective. So study your attention, you know. If anybody has ever seen Star Wars, and your attention, and you will realize things about your being. This is the way it goes. And it's the same if you're in a simulation. A being that fears a known death, it's the unknown. It's another way of saying, like the Sufis would say, to die before you die, which is another of the world's change. So it's like when at that point you're not dying, the world is changing. You see with the world, and the world's like, all right, now you know, you dance, now it's my turn. You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's an incredible, and he tells the archer, Arjuna, in many lifetimes, if I remember correctly, he says something like, in many lifetimes, me and you have taken turns. So the avatar of God says to Arjuna, I have known you from other. Right now, it might be so bizarre because we have individual bodies to consider that the soul is a collective entity. But in Shintoism, those guys are next level. In the philosophical departments of academia consider. You see, it's as if it's all this. Some people feel the world is made of stuff. Some people feel the world is an attention projection. And some people feel that the world is, the truth is inconceivable. And you know what this means? This means that there is a question mark that nobody has answered yet. And we are present in the coolest and most greatest, like, mystery ever. Imagine solving a problem that just the solution is for. The simulation-proof species would be a species that has rendered fear, we're not ignorant of fear, but we've rendered fear meaningless. Why? Because this is the thing between the difference between the animal and the human being. The human being can maintain many worlds at the same time. The animal's just, it's like the level of its instinct, and it has a little bit of imagination, but it can't stay in imagination too long. That means, like, if animals imagine too long, they can go insane. You know. Anyways, guys, I don't know how I'm getting into this, but but what I'm trying to say is that wonder about your presence and the secrets of reality are there. Why? Because if there is truth, it has to be here. Where else can it be? Here instantaneously, or it doesn't exist. So truth was here before we were. And so what enlightenment means is you having the decency as a being to realize the shoulder of the giant you're on. You know, this is sometimes when I have moments where I pray. And when I pray, I am praying, it's as if I feel like I'm everything, doubt, ego, pride, everything washes away. And it's as if I am in the presence of the source of reality. And at that point, it's like even my prayer can't be even words. I'm just like a being just automatically moving in that, presence. So you see, it's the presence of your being, right? And it depends on who you are, and the strategy you implement, right? I was like, okay, if I'm an infusion, an infused self. About Star Wars, guys, is that Yoda was totally into fashion. Why? Because like Yoda didn't need a cane. I am like Yoda was the Skywalker, and Yoda is literally the Bhagavad Gita. The avatar of Krishna is Yoda, and Luke Skywalker, I think, is Arjuna. And I don't know how people understood the idea of the Force, but to me, the Force was that experience of like falling down and learning from your mistakes. Wisdom back in the day was being in connection with the transcendental force of the world. Right now, we're in this weird phase where the transcendental nature of reality is being forgotten. Why? Because it's becoming too desirable to be, a human. Like right now, if you look at human beings, we're non-fictional biochemical systems that have fictional desires in their minds, and they're all living for a future that hasn't happened. Isn't it incredible? We're living, the future is fiction, the present is non-fiction, and the past became non-fiction. It's just the presence of reality. Yeah, I mean, it's like whoever you are listening to me, have you considered that you might be a universal being? That means you have access to a universal mind. A universal mind means a being that trusts the whole world that is being their moment. I think that's the ultimate trust. What else can you do? You trust yourself. You're like, I did that. The Logos is like, good job, buddy. Logos is like, good job, buddy. Now go trust the world. And you trust the world, and you realize when you trust the world, you have trusted everything in the world, and you look at the Logos, and you're like, yo, Logos, why couldn't I just trust the world from the beginning? And the Logos said you could have. Now go tell people about it. Live for your world, for the life of your world. Because I don't know, sure, I could treat people as material objects, but they're not behaving like material objects. I have not seen a human being behave like a statue. Okay? I mean, sometimes I've seen, like, as a tourist, like seeing one of those people busking, like, acting like a statue, but the guy's like, yo, I got a business model to make money from stillness. I don't know, there was a time where I was like, if I had all the money in the world, what would I do? And I thought, like, the only thing that makes sense is to just make an advanced world. Because if you become an advanced being in a world that isn't advanced, you can't be an advanced being. You see, this is the bodhisattvic, that you are right now living for yourself, but yourself is a part of the world. So theoretically, technically you're living for a little part of the world. Now Mr.Within is saying, can you live for all of it? Can you, for the first time in the journey of eons into now, allow yourself what they call the stewardship of the universal sector? And this means that you realize that the love you have shown in individual aspects can be shown to the world. And when you love your world, it's another way of saying you are loving the future of your world. It's like what father or mother doesn't love the future of their child? They're living for the future of their child. So you see, we're living for the future of the species, and whether we like it or not, that's the game we're playing. Everybody who goes to work, that's what you're doing. You're living for the future humanity, but you must realize you're also the present humanity. So regardless of we act, life is a simulation. Somebody was like, yo, placebo effect, what do we do with that? And I'll tell you, placebo means that As the Zen masters say, you gotta climb the mountain like the way you climb a mountain. I'm weak, and it takes the same amount of energy for me to think I'm strong. Okay, let me choose strong. It's like choosing between the color green and blue. It's like, yeah, do you understand when you realize your identity is a way your existence is keeping it, the way your attention is keeping it, then you'll suddenly see why I'm talking about like suddenly the linguistic simulation and how beyond this reality we're not a creature of thought. Thought is a technology. It's like Tony Stark thought he was the Iron Man suit in the same way. Oh, humanity. Your greatness is not where your energy is happening. Your greatness is not for example, I'll give you an example. Imagine a grandmother raised in an era, okay? This woman raised in an era where women were just living indoors, and then they would get married, and then they would live an indoor life, being a housewife and whatnot, okay? My grandmother, for example, she's this religious old lady who has a being just living in the lifetime. In cheerful and grateful attitude. And I was like, this is a great and very advanced being right here, even action, right? So when you realize that of now, the beauty of worlds is truly in the eye of the beholder. What it means is like, if you feel the earth, accept yourself as an ally of the living world, and the earth is your ally, and begin honoring the day to the moment. And I'm not bowing to a thought idea, I'm just bowing to the presence of it all. Truth is right here. It's being live streamed. The same eyes I see God are the same eyes God sees me. And we're literally like metaphysically like a child that doesn't know where its meal is coming from, but its meals are coming from somewhere. The greater dimensions are nourishing the intelligence of lesser ones. What we can be certain for sure is that the higher dimensions are kind. I will tell you this. Higher dimensional beings are kind. Why? Because they don't possess, they give. Possession is when you take. So that's the program he's inputting into his karma. You are not forgotten by your world. It's just that the advanced civilization hasn't found itself yet. So what it means is we're living literally in like caveman times, for the future. Meister Eckhart says the no one in knowledge. Why? Because when man is selfless, when man's divination means that the world is showing you itself. The world, the planetary intelligence is showing itself to you. We're all here for some kind of work. Woken. But only with himself. Meister Eckhart says, the outward work will never be puny if the inward work is. Meister Eckhart says, he who would be serene and pure needs but one thing, detachment. And Meister Eckhart says, every creature is a word of God. Exactly. When in theology, God tells man, in monotheistic theology, God tells man, repeat all the celestial names. That's another way of saying man attained the conscious. And, to me, there's a beautiful poetry that as I sing poetry of the worlds behind my eyes, I am the poetry of the world behind the eyes of the world. Meister Eckhart says one person who has mastered life is better than 1,000 persons who have mastered only the contents of books. But no one can get anything out of life without God. instant, and now which always and without end is itself new. There is no yesterday nor any tomorrow, but only now, as it was 1,000 years ago, and as it will be 1,000 years hence. And perhaps the child of the now is the future. Wow. Meister Eckhart says God expects but one thing of you, and that is that you should come out of yourself insofar as you are created. You are a created being made, and let go and be God, and let God be God in you. Let God be God in you. That's your presence, dear viewers. That's how you get out of the simulation. You realize what is the move are deeper than your sight. For we are here to be part of the greatness of mankind. Thank you for listening. Share, subscribe, and write your opinion of how we create a simulation-proof species. I have a vision. The comment sections of these lectures are going to become incredible, like research places. You know, I don't know why, but I feel these Mr.Within talks are heading towards maybe some sort of academic recognition or something. But we are left with our emotions in the present. But we also have the probabilities of the mind. And so whoever you are, Mr.Within will say, honor your mind. That thing I was saying, that the mind is a lousy master but a great servant, you got to be in an alpha position in your mind, which means that you got here, the idea of you understands that. So it's that the mind is a force. I don't want to say it's like a dog, like a pet level, right? But the mind is like a companion. It's equivalent to advanced AI and Jarvis in the future. All those people who are having experiences with the logos, it's like your future self has access to a unique Jarvis Iron Man kind of thing. Because what is going on is that the future is projected out of the past, so the findings in the past to some degree are creating the imagination. We're going to reach a point where there's going to come revolutions of like clone rights, android rights, extraterrestrial rights on Earth. Even animals, in my science fiction, I've written about this. Animals are going to have, like, in my science fiction, I've written this thing about this cow who has this clear of the UN in my sci-fi novels. Human beings eating meat and beef this whole time. We need some sort of compensation for this. Right? And all just going to be globalized for our species in the future. It's going to be everywhere. Okay? In the future, we might be able to, through nanotechnology and advanced AI, create fictional creatures. I was seeing this picture of AI making human beings is going to bond with like an AI android, and they both look human. Right? And the clone's going to be like, yo, I'm not real. Oh my God, you're not real either. Let's be besties. Imagine, we create a movie called The Artificial Besties, Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And that's it. There's a ladder. There's a ladder you can climb. This is wisdom passed down from Hagakure, the Book of the Samurai. So Yamamoto Tsunetomo, this is the algorithm, guys. These are the ladders you need to climb. You need to climb. So Yamamoto Tsunetomo was a samurai, and he was saying, like, think of this, even though you're reading it from left to right, benevolence is the highest ideal. So what it means is, in this life, let's say you're somebody who you think you have no honor, no value. So you gotta start by respecting things. Okay? If you're someone who, in some sense, this is the first step, right? That means if you don't believe in super like metaphysics and whatever, that's fine. You don't need to care about meditation, that's fine. But you got to start having something in this life you can respect throughout the day, whether it's yourself, whether it's others, whether it's the world. Okay? Then after respect, what do we have? We have loyalty. Oh, excuse me. We have honesty. Honesty is very cool. It just means you being able to accept the simplest version of you, whether you feel that's a fool or not. You know, when I'm being honest, it's like there's no inner realm necessity. You know, it's like there's not even a reason to be an idea. I'm just present. It's just simple presence. It's like, it doesn't get more honest than that. We're just present. So honesty is the attitude which then builds up to honor eventually, right? So you got to be honest. That means you are being brave enough to try out and be your real self. This might be scary. You might feel your real self is not like who you desire to be, but this is the power of it, right? So first have respect for the situation. You can even communicate to the whole species online. So respect is very important. Respect means you're from being as a being, you're finding the capacity to hold value. Honesty means being able to hold true value. Okay? And honesty it's just literally like you having no thought who you are before you have any opinion, really. Like so being honest means being able to be true, and being able to be true to yourself. And being able to true to yourself doesn't mean you gotta have this fictional desire that you're like a limitless being, you're all powerful being. No, being true means being capable of acknowledging your limitations. This is part of honesty. You see, sometimes I've seen people in the new age community, you know, and of course, you know, in their inner realms they have celestial relationships, you know, they're aliens or communicating with aliens, and I'm like, okay, you know, if I had a daughter and my daughter was like age 12 and she had that sort of mind, I'd be like, okay, right? But at some point, if you don't acknowledge your limitations, you never get to see your true limitless ability. Okay? So honesty means like being okay with your own limitation, and then it's easy to be honest. But if you are not, you're like, oh shit, I gotta be something else. You're always in some sort of psychological competition. You miss out on being yourself as the life is going forth. So honesty. Then what does honesty do? So here's the thing. If you are not being honest, you cannot be courageous. Let me tell you why. Because you don't have the power of your real self. So anytime you catch a liar in the act, they paralyze. Or somebody who's like acting, who's not being the real self, you suddenly catch them in the middle of it, they stop, they paralyze. Why? Because they realize they have been functioning under an idea that is not them. You see, part of in Zen practice is like the aim is to see things as they are. But the thing about human desire and imagination is that it projects us in a scenario where we're not seeing ourselves as we are, and sometimes we're behaving differently, you know?